Good evening, everyone. The time is 7:32, and we will begin open session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everyone. We have a lot going on tonight, lots to celebrate as we wrap up the end of the year. Marilyn, do we have any agenda-related comments this evening?
We do.
Great. First, I'd like to say that there are two opportunities for audience members to address the Board of Education. We appreciate your participation, but please understand we do not engage in dialogue. If there is a specific question or comment that requires follow-up, the appropriate administrator will respond at a later time. Individuals addressing the board are expected to conduct themselves with respect and civility pursuant to Board Policy 830. Individuals shall not use vulgar or obscene language or impede, delay, disrupt, or interfere with the board meeting. In the event this occurs, you will receive one warning regarding your conduct. If the behavior continues again, you will be notified that you are in violation of trespassing and will be asked to leave our property. Failure to comply immediately and cooperatively with a directive to leave will result in the involvement of law enforcement officials. Marilyn, can you please call our first speaker?
Camille Alvarez.
Okay, do we have another speaker?
Jill Nelson.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the two notes and the last notes for the board meeting about the modification to the 22-23 late start schedule, as well as the reinstatement of the early dismissal days. In my review of these, I am just looking to understand a little bit more about why these requests have been made. I understand that the late start schedule is really about the bus driving situation, which a lot of the districts obviously have been impacted with. So just wondering why, though, that we have to, as a district, delay the start of the late start day for 30 minutes for the whole school year. If there is a different solution that could be made to this, we looked at some of the other districts in the area, and as far as we know, they have not also delayed their late start days. The other thing is the reinstatement of the early dismissal days. The main reason for this request was professional development time, and I don't know when the last time these early dismissal days were in place, but just wondering why they were first of all removed and why they needed to be restated. We just wanted, again, figure out why these additional professional development days are requested and how they would benefit the students for this next school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Karen.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for letting me speak here tonight. I wanted to comment on the new scoreboard and timing system that the South Campus pool, it was listed as a capital budget request on the April agenda. I feel like I represent many dedicated athletes and their supportive parents when I say that approving the purchase of the proposed system will have a positive impact for years to come. The South Campus pool is really a great facility, and it's equipped to host dual meets, conference, sectional championship meets in every aspect except for the timing system. So I experienced this firsthand this year. My daughter was a freshman on the swim team, and many of her races ended with the system failing and really not giving her an accurate time. Swimming is time-based. The motivation to train and compete, it comes from like the smallest time improvement And this was something that she and her teammates, they just couldn't rely on that. The sectional meet for the girls in 2021 was supposed to be hosted at LT. Unfortunately, the timing system prevented this, so these girls didn't have the opportunity to swim at their home pool. They did host, the boys hosted the sectional meet, and it was really, we anticipated that there was going to be issues, and there were, with the accuracy of the times. And also the board, the way it reads out for a spectator to actually read the times is pretty difficult. It really makes the overall experience of this swim meet just really subpar. This coming fall, IHSA is also having, it has LT listed as the host for sectionals. So we would be looking at this really fun, highly competitive, this meet means the girls' season to them. But I'm concerned that this is not going to be an option, or that we won't be able to allow them to actually compete to the level that they deserve. Another benefit of the system that was proposed, it has a video display system that can be used for instruction, throughout community-based swim lessons, even in the gym swim, which is, the beloved time for these freshmen and sophomores. But it could be used for multi-purposes. I wanted to say that I am a part of a group of very committed parents, and we're asking you to vote yes, please, in favor of this greatly needed facility upgrade. And in closing, I'd like to offer that the swim community is ready and willing to support the district with fundraising, if necessary, to help close a financial gap so that this scoreboard can begin making a difference at the start of the 2022 year. Something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda Collins.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I too here am from the swim community to support the timing upgrade. I'm aware that there are many line items on the capital improvements. I'd like to present you with some very viable reasons why the LT South Campus pool needs immediate attention. Due to its deteriorating scoreboard and timing system, the sport of swimming is measured in hundredths, not even seconds, in order to host fair meets and provide the athletes of our school and others who attend our meets with accurate measurement of their times and to run a valid and fair meet, we need a scoring system and a scoreboard that actually works. Other high school sports rely on umpires and referees used in order to conduct fair play for all of their competitors, but a swim meet relies on a timing system that will work for every race in every lane. For example, during the LT Boys Swim and Dive sectional meet, arguably the most important meet of the season, the scoreboard was illegible. Imagine your high school senior who has worked since a small child trying to achieve a time that will allow them to qualify for the state meet. When trying to read the board, it was impossible to see that time since several of the numbers for almost every lane simply do not work. On top of that, there were races at sectionals that the timing system simply didn't register. So backup times, which are way less accurate, had to be used. This is not acceptable. First off, swimming is deemed a partial cut sport for all of IHSA. Thus, LT is able to roster a very large team. In some years, around 75 athletes for both boys and girls teams. This program is open to beginners as well as experts, not to mention the water polo teams who also rely on a working scoreboard, roster 40 as well. Secondly, swimming is a life-saving skill. A beginner swimmer could join the team and learn to swim in a way that would end up saving their life in an emergency situation. Thirdly, over the last 10 years, the LT aquatic teams have produced some of the most successful teams in LT athletic history. Girls Swim and Dive has 3 top 5 finishes. Boys, 6 top 6 finishes, 4 state trophies, 2 state team titles. Girls water polo sectional titles and state tournament appearances. Boys water polo has 4 state trophies, 2 state titles. Look around, not many other athletic programs at LT can come close to this. All the while, these teams roster a large number of athletes, allowing a huge number to participate in a school activity. Fourth, a new scoreboard could be used in PE classes as well as the district's Learn to Swim classes. Videos could be played on the scoreboard while keeping kids in the water and teaching them this life-saving skill. Please consider passing this line item to allow both the scoreboard and the timing system to be updated. The kids in our community deserve this. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
The remaining speakers are for the second portion.
Sorry?
The remaining speakers are for the second portion of public comment.
Thank you, Marilyn. That- Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh,
Camille?
okay, yes.
Thank you so much. I must have been first on the list. My name is Camille Alvarez. I am a community member, a former LT student, graduate. I have one child that has graduated and two more that may have to come through here. For this portion of the evening, I really want to speak about a topic that was glossed over during last week's meeting about the racial disproportionality that's happening here at LT and the rate at which minority students are being expelled and suspended. This is not news to the community, nor is it news to LT, especially since you guys have been sitting on this information for years and that the state had to come back a second time and ask you to comply. Why is LT dragging their feet to comply? Lyons Township knows that there is a problem with how they discipline minority children. It is not equitable, it's not fair, and we all know this. And it's like the school is kicking and screaming, dragging their feet to turn in this report. The presenter last week said 4 out of the last 6 years we were in the top 20%, or we were eligible, which meant that we were in the top 20% in the state for schools that are unfairly targeting minority students and expelling and suspending them. But what that presenter also kept saying was, but in 2021, we were not eligible. We were not eligible in 2021. 4 out of the last 6 years we were eligible, which means that we were doing this bad thing. But in 2021 we were not. But 2021 was a COVID year, or the year coming right out of COVID. If I'm not mistaken, 2021 was the year where the students were not in the school like they are pre-pandemic, when the state decided that LT needed to comply with some kind of plan to fix this issue. But this presenter presented to the board and the community at large that 2021, we were not eligible and we're going to keep that going. And I am offended by that, and you all should be offended as well. Because what exactly is she saying? What did you do in 2021? Other than live like the rest of us in COVID, and I'm almost certain that a large part of the minority students were probably kept home during COVID. I know my minority student was kept home during COVID when that was the option to have. And so I think that's very misleading, very misleading. I think that you should define minority because it's very important. Who are we talking about here? It's important, it matters. Because even within the minorities, there are different support systems in place depending on who you are. The fact that you all have to vote on this, and it was just presented last week, but you've been sitting on the information for years, is just an outrageous disgrace to come from this school district. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes our agenda-related public comments. We will now move on to LTA President Andrew Johannes.
Hello, I am Andrew Johannes. I am the president of the Lyons Township Education Association, or the Teachers Union. First off, the teachers of LT would like to congratulate the seniors. It has been quite a journey for them during their 4 years here at LT. They have been through a lot. Back in March of 2020, their sophomore year was disrupted by the lockdown due to the pandemic. Their junior year was a hybrid learning, and this year we started with masking and another wave of COVID. Thankfully, their experience has returned to a more normal situation. The teachers are very proud of this resilient group and have been very impressed with their handling of the difficult years. This class has a lot to be proud of, including their academic and extracurricular successes. We are in the final week of their time here, and we look forward to celebrating their accomplishments. The seniors will now get to celebrate their own high school careers, starting with Lyons Palooza, the senior award ceremony, prom, and graduation. We wish them all the best of luck in their future endeavors. The LTA supports the process and finalization of the strategic plan. We appreciate the opportunity part of the process in developing the plan. We believe that this will help clarify the direction of the school. We continue to have productive conversations in the Grading Implementation Committee, and a few modifications have been proposed that I believe will help address some of the concerns expressed. I truly believe that continuing to have regular meetings and expansion of the grading implementation team will allow for a constant evaluation of the grading changes and developing the changes or modifications as needed. Partnering together, the teachers and administrators can be adaptive to meet the needs of the students. We are in the final sprint of the end of the year. Students have completed their AP exams, classes are winding down. This has been a stressful year, and I want to say thank you to all the teachers for their hard work in helping the students reach their potential. I'd also like to congratulate Dave Root, the Green Hallow Scholars, and Amina for her excellent work here on the board, so congratulations. And then finally, the LTA would like to thank each board member. This has been a very difficult year for everyone in education, especially for those who have to make difficult decisions. We know that this has not been easy, but know you have the students' and teachers' best interests at heart. We are grateful for your continued support as we look forward to work together for the next school year. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. Thank you. And next up, speaking of Amina, this is, I think, your last meeting with us, so we're very excited to hear from you. So we have the student report with Amina Qureshi.
Yes, thank you. French Club had a special meeting with French foreign exchange students to play games and talk about French culture. Yoga Club had a special meeting for Mother's Day where you got to bring your mother in to do a special yoga flow. Step Into Lyons Den was their 6th annual LTHS Step Show competition. And the Eurythmic Dance Company had Metamorphosis on May 5th, 6th, and 7th. LT has been helping Ukrainian refugees by donating sleeping bags. And Minorities in Agriculture had their first meeting on the 27th, or the April 27th. PSI has been working on finishing up their year strong. The Fishing Club has many members qualifying for the IHSA Bass Fishing Sectional Tournament. BPA had 6 members go to nationals and win various awards. Robotics was 42nd in Worlds. And then the Lyons newspaper was awarded gold and silver certificates, 5 blue ribbons, and 5 honorable mentions from the NISPA. And then the Illinois Journalism Education Association gave them 3rd place in Best Hybrid Publication and in Best Overall Publication. Individually, we had 5 first place winners, 5 second place winners, 2 third place, and 13 honorable mentions. Fashion Club had their spring fashion show today from 6 to 7. And in terms of sports, the boys gymnastics got 3rd in state and Randy medals in 2 events. Ultimate Frisbee is also heading to state. And baseball had their first game on May 2nd. Girls softball won against Hinsdale Central and had their pink out event. Girls badminton had 4 girls moving into state. Girls track had multiple relay and individual state qualifiers. In terms of girls and boys water polo, we had both of them sectional champions. Now, boys volleyball got 6th place at the Richard Invite. Girls soccer are conference champions. Boys lacrosse won against St. Rita, and boys tennis and girls lacrosse are having very strong seasons. Lyons Palooza is on May 19th. As well, we also had the LT Arts Show from May 6th to May 15th, and our jazz band concert on May 13th. Media Arts Night of Entertainment has their 10th anniversary on May 17th. And as always, congratulations to the May Students of the Month. They were nominated by their teachers and selected by the various departments as the most exemplary students in each subject. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you. We're going to miss you.
So, Amina, you've spent your entire year celebrating other students through your monthly reports, everything that's happening with activities, athletics, academics, and so now it's our turn to celebrate you. I want to thank you for obviously your attendance at all these meetings, but also the awesome reports that you've given each month. And on behalf of the Board of Education, thank you for your service as student rep to the Board of Ed. And I would invite any of our board members to share a nice word about Amina as well. We have one more gift for you, not just that, but I'm going to see that to you as well.
Okay. I think I'll just echo the sentiment that we really enjoyed. Oh gosh. You've got a few more days to get through. There's just too much going on. Don't break anything. Just wanted to say thank you again. We've really enjoyed your reports. We've enjoyed having you a part of the table and sharing all your thoughts in the news with what's going on at the school. It really keeps us, there's so many things going on, so I really appreciate your insight and report. If anybody else wants to add.
Yeah, Amina, thank you so much for representing the students and really keeping us connected to all the amazing things that happen here at LT. We really appreciate it, and you did a phenomenal job. And boy, there were a few times I looked over and after we're in the 3-hour mark of our meetings going, oh no, I'm sure she's got other things she needs to tend to. But we really appreciate you being here and representing all the amazing things happening at LT, and the best of luck to you in whatever you do.
Thank you.
Again, Amina, thank you so much. We appreciate all of your service as student rep to the board, and we hope this was a valuable experience for you. Congratulations.
I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, good.
Really enjoyed my time. Thank you for having me.
Best
One
of
more
luck.
round of applause for Amina.
Yeah.
So we do have a special guest here this evening. We have identified the student who will sit in Amina's seat next year as a senior. And I'm pleased to introduce Matthew Walsh, who is joining us here this evening with his mother, Catherine. Is your dad here, Matthew? Okay. All right, that's okay. So Matthew is the son of Matthew and Catherine Walsh. And Matthew, just real briefly, we're excited to have you join this group next year. And we know that Amina has laid a great foundation for the reports that you're going to give, and we're excited to have you part of it.
Thanks, Matthew. Welcome. And next up, I think we have Dr. Waterman for the superintendent's report.
Yeah, go right into the superintendent's report. Thank you, President Dillon. So May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The Teaching Equitable Asian American Community History, or TEACH, Act ensures that every public school student in Illinois learn about the contributions of Asian Americans to the economic, cultural, social, and political development. Beginning next school year, every public school shall include in its curriculum a unit studying the events of Asian American history, including the history of Asian Americans in Illinois and the Midwest, as well as the contributions of Asian Americans toward advancing civil rights from the 19th century onward. Ensuring that Asian American history is taught lays a foundation for cross-cultural education and advances racial equity. LT looks forward to expanding Asian American history and contributions within our curriculum, and is proud to celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The LT Community Advisory Council met for the final time on Wednesday, April 27th, and the topic was strategic planning. The council reviewed a draft of the plan, offered feedback on the various components of the plan as well. Within the board packet on page 5, you'll find the complete document that includes the areas that the council supports, as well as some really good ideas for improvement. The most prevalent ideas for improvement were related to the sentence structure of the vision. I think that came up at our board discussion last week as well. And the most prevalent area of support was related to the clear and concise format of the plan. Again, that entire list is included in your packet on page 5. Between April 19th and May 9th, the strategic plan team asked for feedback on the draft plan from the core team, from the strategic plan core team, the admin team, the Board of Education, the LTCAC, and the community as a whole through the administration of a survey. So again, review that the consensus is provided in your board packet. One of our goals tonight during this consensus report was to recognize Kate Kelly, who's completing her time as the LTCAC chair. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight. She had a last-minute conflict come up. But I do want to publicly recognize Kate for her time and effort that she put into leading the LTCAC for the last 5 years. We do have a gift to give her, but for tonight, I just want to simply say thanks to Kate for all that she's done, and we'll make sure to get that gift to her on behalf of the Board of Ed in the next week or so. We've had 4 FOIA requests since our last meeting. A public record collection service requested emails from January 1, 2022 between LT and the Western Springs Police Department, as well as a local reporter. We had a commercial request for the results of the fiscal year 2022 gym uniform RFP. Local newspaper reporter requested communication regarding anyone banned from board meetings and their responses. And then an attorney requested records of incidents of any student assault, threats, or bullying. So that's our FOIA report for this evening. I want to shift the attention to student and staff celebrations. So we have some honored guests here in attendance, and we want to start with some Embry-Riddle teacher recognition. Scott Eggerty.
Thank you, Dr. Waterman. I have the distinction to introduce our guests here. This concludes, I believe, the 16th year of our partnership with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. It is a partnership that is one that when people talk about unique things at LT, the fact that students can work toward getting a pilot license here is one of those that people are just in awe of. When I was approached by Colleen Walsh-Conklin, who's the executive director of the Gates Aerospace Institute, about coming out and recognizing our instructor, Dave Root, I couldn't have been more thrilled. Dave's absolutely worthy, and they're going to tell you a little bit about him. So I'm just going to hand things over to Colleen and her colleagues from Embry-Riddle, and we absolutely welcome them. They flew all the way up from Florida to be with us tonight, and so we welcome them.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Chair Dillon, Superintendent Walter, board members. Thank you so much for allowing us to have some time tonight to recognize a very, very special professor to us. And before I get into Scott's accolades, Professor Root is going to give a brief overview of his program and some of the successes he's had, and then we would like to acknowledge him with a recognition from my team.
All right, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Root. I'm also an alum of LT, and while I was here, I took the single aviation course that was offered. My old math teacher's up on the stage too right now. I'll just point that out. A little fun fact about the aviation program here, we could trace the roots back to 1929. In the 1929 yearbook, there's a picture of the aviation class. So for people to think this is new and cutting edge, it is, but it also goes all the way back to the 20s. In fact, the quarry over in McCook, that's now a big hole in the ground, that used to be the LaGrange Stinson Airport, and that's where our students would take lessons. You know, before I start talking about our program, I want to thank these folks. When we first started this partnership, there was a core group of about 4 schools, and now I think you're up over 110 programs. So these folks are impacting many, many lives in a very positive way, so that's awesome. The courses that we have here, we're consistently running over 10 sections a year now, which is awesome. It's grown quite a bit since that first year I came on board, and that's exciting. We're fortunate to provide our kids with some awesome trips. Recently, over the past couple of years, since I haven't been up to present in a while, we've taken trips to the Illinois National Guard's aviation wings. We checked out the Black Hawk Training and Maintenance Facility in Kankakee, the Unmanned Aircraft Systems Training and Maintenance Facility in Peoria. We've been to O'Hare Airport to tour American and United Airlines operations facilities, and then of course our weekly flights every Monday night out at the DuPage Airport to provide our students with introductory flights. This year we've exceeded over 100 students, so that's really awesome. In addition, we've had some exciting guest speakers recently. We've had LT alum and LT Hall of Fame inductee, retired UPS Captain Karen Koenig. We've had LT and Embry-Riddle alum, Air Force Thunderbird pilot Captain Mike Brewer. We've had LT alum, Marine Corps Osprey pilot, Captain Jack Albertini, come talk to the students while on leave from deployment to Somalia. This year we have also had NASA engineers come in that are working on the X-59 quiet supersonic technology aircraft. You've probably seen that in the news. If you haven't, check it out. It's very interesting. As well as a drone operator and engineer from ComEd. So I just want to share a little bit about that, and again, thank these folks for doing what they do, and thanks for letting me do what I do here.
Thank you. As you can see, I have to say, I'm here with my Director of Education Programs, Kate Barnett, and our Director of Flight Ops, Dave Moorfield, and we had an opportunity to tour your campus today. What a facility that you have here. What a beautiful, beautiful campus that you have. As Dave mentioned, we have about 110 schools, and really the opportunities and the support that we hear that Dave has here on campus is just tremendous. So thank you for that. So tonight is really our chance, if you will, to take a minute to just recognize Dave. A lot of times, especially dual enrollment programs revolving around aviation or many of the sciences, it's very difficult to find professors that meet the criteria to credential, because our professors are credentialed exactly as if they were to step on campus to teach courses there. And for those of you who don't know, I'll just share a little bit, but Dave is a commercial pilot. He is a licensed commercial multi-engine rated pilot. He also has his remote pilot in command, which is his drone license. He is a CFI, which is a certified flight instructor, and a CFII, which is a certified flight instructor for instrument. It's very difficult to hold on to incredible instructors with this type of background, especially in the middle of a pilot shortage. So we want him to know, as I'm sure his families and students want him to know, how much we appreciate. It takes a special person to be dedicated to the classroom. And he is one of our OG, 13 years of service. As he mentioned, when we first started, we had about 4 programs, and now 110. And he stands out as a shining example to every single one of them. And we wanted to come and honor his time of service and spend a little bit of time to recognize him in front of you all. But again, to just thank him, hope he understands and knows how much we appreciate his professionalism, his dedication to creating the next generation of aviators that our country so desperately needs, and to thank you for once again supporting him in all that he does. So thank you, and Dave, with that, we would like to honor you with a little clock.
Thank you.
13 years of Thank you.
Thank you to our visitors from Embry-Riddle, and Dave, again, congratulations and thanks for all that you do for our students and families within the aviation program. Okay. We have some more people to honor. We have students, some special guests that are students here from our Green Halo Scholars Program. We are in year 3 of our Green Halo Scholar Program, and I'm going to have Ms. Owens introduce them and talk a little bit about the program. Leslie.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Waterman. I am honored to get to present the Green Halo Scholars class of our 2022 class, and many of our students are here with their families as well as some special guests from the Green Halo program. For those who don't know, Green Halo Scholars Program is a community-based organization that provides mentorship to high school students for their post-high school plans. They assist with college admissions process, with financial aid applications, transition to college, and then mentoring to successfully graduate. So we do have some recognition for these scholars. I'm going to give a little more information about the students, and then I'm going to ask Sarah Miller, who is the program director, to say a few more words about the program, introduce the mentors that are here as well, and then we'll recognize the students. So in general, the class, this class for Green Halo Scholars, not just the LT students, but over $3.75 million in grants and scholarships was awarded. And just for our students, we have 6 students. Yanfu Ao he committed to the University of Pennsylvania through the Questbridge National College Match Program with scholarships and grants totaling $80,789 per year, all costs covered without loans. Gonzalo Herrera committed to Purdue University's Direct Admit Nursing Program with grants and scholarships totaling $36,145, all direct costs covered without loans. Brendan Perry committed to Northern Illinois with scholarships and grants totaling $23,491. Elias Salasis committed to Columbia College Chicago with scholarships and grants totaling $29,991 per year. Abina Yaboa committed to Illinois State with scholarships and grants totaling $11,941 per year. And Amoy Russell committed to Michigan State University with their Opportunity Award that grants in-state tuition, scholarships, and grants totaling $31,516. So super excited for these students, and excited to introduce Sarah Miller, who's the program director.
So much for having us and for recognizing our students. My name is Sarah Miller, and I'm the program director at Green Halo Scholars. I'm joined tonight by our 2 co-founders, Sally Guglielmo and Vandana Ball, along with 2 of our mentors, Billy Miller and Peg Sloyan. Our students have put in a lot of work over the last year. They're nominated to our program by our school counseling team. So we want to thank them so much for all of the work and effort that they've put in to working alongside us and our students. Our students have met with us regularly. They've attended college visits, they've done workshops, they've filled out the FAFSA, which, as you all know, is a pain. They've done just about everything that we've asked them to, and as you can see from the report, they've come out with huge accomplishments, and we're just so proud of them. So congratulations to our students. Thank you and your team for all of your support and your partnership. We're just so grateful to have a great partner and a great school community like you all. So thanks again for recognizing our students.
Wow. Thanks so much, Sarah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Dr. Waterman will present the students with a certificate, and if all of the Green Hill Scholars want to stand up, that would be wonderful. All right, we have Yanfu Ao. Gonzalo Herrera. We have Brendan Perry. We have Elias Salasis. And Amoy Russell. And Abina Yaboa could not be here tonight, but let's give her a round of applause as well. Thank you so much, and congratulations again.
Yes, congratulations. That was a lot of hard work. Very proud of you.
Honestly, the best part of our year, but also this month of May, is celebrating students. So how about another round of applause for our Green Halo Scholars? So finally tonight, I want to recognize the class of 2022 as they celebrate the completion of their high school experience. Starting yesterday with our baccalaureate, the class of 2022 will participate in Senior Honors Assembly on Thursday evening, prom on Sunday, and then, of course, weather permitting, commencement on Wednesday, May 25th. We're extremely proud of all that this class has accomplished during a challenging 4 years, and we're excited to appropriately recognize and celebrate them over the next 10 days. Back in March, on March 21st, our Board of Education approved a declaration that identifies Thursday, May 19th as Senior Honors Day. So tonight, I would like to invite President Dillon to read a resolution in honor of the class of 2022.
Thank you, Dr. Waterman. I'm looking forward to reading this declaration. It's very formal, but the sentiment is that we're very excited and really proud of our students. Lyons Township High School District 204 Senior Honors Day Declaration Class of 2022. Whereas Lyons Township High School District 204 places great importance on the academic achievement and co-curricular involvement of its students throughout their 4 years of high school, and whereas the students in the class of 2022 are required to successfully meet the academic standards and expectations of Lyons Township High School District 204 and earn no less than 23 Carnegie units of credit in order to receive a high school diploma, and whereas the senior students in the class of 2022 have distinguished themselves in activities, athletics, and scholarship throughout their 4 years of high school. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of Lyons Township High School, District 204, Cook County, State of Illinois, proudly acknowledges these outstanding students for their commitment, integrity, scholarship, and contributions to the school's traditions, and declares Thursday, May 19th, 2022, as Senior Honors Day, so that the Lyons Township High School community may so honor the class of 2022 individually and collectively. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Again, congratulations to the class of 2022, and that concludes my superintendent report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Waterman. Okay, now move on to unfinished business under action items. Thank you for coming. Bye. Our first agenda item under unfinished business is the 2022-23 textbook final update, second reading. Scott Aggerning.
Thank you, President Dillon. We have a second reading for the textbooks that were presented both last month and at the committee last week. We have no changes from those proposals, and we've had no community review of or inspection of the materials that have been on display in the boardroom. I recommend that we approve this second reading of the additional textbooks this evening. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion then to approve the 2022-23 textbook final updates as presented?
So moved.
Marilyn, will you please call the roll?
Member O'Bear?
Yes.
Member Beatty Daniels?
Yes.
Member Kelly?
Yes.
Member Thomas?
Yes.
Member Dillon?
Yes. Thank you. Our next agenda item is the course team summer workshop proposal. Scott Aggerting.
Thank you again. In April, the Board of Education approved 20 summer workshops covering a variety of topics and initiatives. The summer workshops for 3 course teams who have expressed interest in implementing an 8F grading system were deferred to the May meeting. We currently have 30 course teams using that 8F system, and this work involves updating the course's curriculum and assessments. Teachers from American Studies, cross-categorical English, and English learning reading have expressed interest in this as well and have requested the support through the approval of a summer workshop to complete the curriculum and assessment updates this summer. The 3 course teams include a total of 6 teachers. As a result, our recommendation tonight is to approve a summer workshop for the 3 course teams outlined in your packet. I recommend that approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think we've talked a lot about this over the last couple of meetings, and moving forward, I guess the only question is, Dr. Waterman, some of the things that were mentioned that you would bring back to the board, is there any timeline on those items? And the 2 specific ones I'm thinking about are the evaluation of the 28, 30 course teams that are already doing A through F, and then the information from the 40-plus schools that that people were trying to gather information about how that could impact our students.
I'll give the board an update on that prior to the June meeting, just to let the board know where we're at on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew we wanted to follow up and get some more input, so thank you for that. Anyone else?
Just before, I just want to make sure that we're clear that the teachers for this A through F has all wanted to do this summer work, right? They've all asked to do this.
Correct.
Correct, yep.
Yeah, that's a good clarification point.
Yeah, and just to tag on to that, it sounds like from previous discussions that we've had, not only have they volunteered to do that and want to move in this direction, but they've already completed all of the curriculum realignment that's necessary to move forward for next year, for the whole entire year, is that right?
Yes, so even the cross-categorical English, those two instructors were part of the presentation in February, so they've been working toward this for quite some time. The EL reading is a brand-new course, or a revisiting of an older course, so they're redeveloping it with that as the core of the course as it's coming, and American Studies Prep has been aligned in this direction for quite some time.
So essentially, we're just giving them approval to get stuff that they've already had in the works.
Right, and giving them the opportunity to go a little deeper in some of the methodology for ensuring that the grading practices work.
Okay. I think it makes sense for those who do want to move forward with that to give them that opportunity to do so. Anybody else? Thank you. Is there a motion then to approve the course team summer workshop proposal as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Marilyn, will you call the roll, please?
Yes.
Member Kelly?
Yes.
Member Thomas?
Yes.
Member Aubert?
Yes.
Member Dillon?
Yes. Thank you. Next up, under action items, we have new business. First item is the appointment of a hearing officer for student disciplinary proceedings. Dr. Waterman.
Yeah, within the board packet, you probably noticed a memo written from our school attorney, Franzik. We have Dana Crumley here with us this evening to answer any questions. But essentially, we're asking the board to authorize the superintendent to appoint a licensed Illinois attorney to serve as a hearing officer in student disciplinary proceedings. I think probably the most important part of the discussion this evening is to identify the time frame that the board is comfortable authorizing me to do that. We're happy to take questions, and Dana is here as well in case there are any questions that are related to this.
Thanks, Dana, for coming. So I think we look to you for the expertise and the background that you've had for these kinds of issues. If you can just maybe speak a few minutes about your reasoning behind the recommendation.
Of course. So under the school code, there are two ways to proceed with a disciplinary hearing. And of course, whenever you're considering an expulsion of a student or any serious disciplinary intervention, that there's due process attached to that. And the board can either choose to have the hearing in a closed session of one of its meetings, or it can appoint a hearing officer. Your policy mirrors the school code, so it allows for those same two methods. We do recommend, because expulsion hearings may be reviewed by the circuit court, or the decisions that you make in regard to student expulsions and student disciplines may be reviewed by the Circuit Court of Cook County, that you use a hearing officer. The benefits to that are having a written record. The hearing officer is an experienced attorney who can rule on evidentiary matters if they arise, who can make sure that the witness testimony is fully put on the record, that you have a complete record, and that you have a complete report with all the findings of fact for your consideration. Conversely, in our experience, when the board has a hearing in a closed session, you do have the recording, but that's not quite the same level of record that you would get when you have a hearing officer conducting the proceeding. So that's, the main reason that we do recommend that. I do think it's a little less intimidating for the student, frankly, to be in a smaller room. I mean, it's great to come before the board if you're celebrating something, but it might be intimidating to come before and sit before many people and review a disciplinary incident that you've been involved in. And I think since the passage of Senate Bill 100 in 2016 and really looking at making sure that when students are disciplined that other interventions are put in place first, and it really to minimize the harm that discipline that can result from student discipline. So I think that's another reason to have a hearing officer. And also just for professionalism and people having a sense of dignity when they have to discuss something that's difficult about their child or their family. Having an impartial person who's, they're not going to run into at the grocery store or just sort of see in the community might give a little bit more a sense of impartiality and fairness and just confidentiality. Not that I'm saying anyone would be non-confidential.
Appreciate that. So I just wanted to be clear too then, so what we're asking of the board then here, Brian, is to authorize you to be able to appoint the hearing officer, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
In terms of time frame, I think we have some options. My initial thought is to think of this year to year. So to ask the board to authorize this for the next 12 months, which would basically be the 22-23 school year, and then we would just review this on an annual basis. But I'm open for other thoughts on that too.
So Brian, to clarify, when you say to appoint it, is it just for, it's for any incidents that might come up for here? Would it be the same hearing
Any
officer?
student disciplinary proceedings.
Okay, and I guess my question to clarify what you had said is, you said aside from expulsion, there would be another time that we would use a hearing officer for serious infractions. When would that be?
Well, I mean, I think the suspension review process does not involve an independent hearing officer, but if the suspension review is appealed, you might get to the point where you're before a hearing officer, right? So not the first hearing, whereas in an expulsion, it would be the first hearing, would be either before the board or a hearing officer, but in a suspension, there's usually, and I'd have to look at your board policy, but there's usually layers where the suspension is first appealed to someone in the school that hasn't imposed the suspension. And then if that person is dissatisfied at that level, you would have an impartial hearing officer hear that appeal.
And so, Brian, when you say you would appoint someone, would that be the same attorney then for the full year, or would it be?
It would be specific to the incident. So I would work with our counsel to identify the appropriate.
If we had,
we could change, yeah.
heaven forbid, 5 incidences, there would be, there could theoretically be 5 different hearing officers.
Yeah.
And that's all that they do too, Dana, that the hearing officer, is that their primary?
No. I mean, there's no one that's really, their job is to be a hearing officer other than those that work for the state and administrative review hearings. Really, when we're looking for a hearing officer to hear a board hearing, typically it's a licensed attorney that has some experience in school law, but is not necessarily a school board attorney. So obviously we have colleagues that are in different firms and that also represent school boards. We want a person that's going to be completely impartial, so we look for someone who has experience in school law, but not necessarily defending boards of education. Maybe a person that's more of a student-centered attorney, or someone that practices in an area of education law, so they're very familiar with the due process protections that are applicable in student disciplinary proceedings, but they're not defending the boards who are making those determinations. I think one of the reasons it's important to have the superintendent be able to, not that you would have many different people, but you also have to realize that because these people are practicing attorneys, you have to get someone who's available to do it. There is, like with all due process, timing is part of it. And while there's not a defined time frame, it's also not something that you can just put off indefinitely. It needs to be done in an expeditious manner. So allowing for the appointment of a different attorney, even a different attorney in the same firm, will allow you to have that flexibility to be time sensitive to the process.
And I'm sorry to ask one more question to clarify. So when you're saying you would appoint them, the motion would be for the year. If we're looking at doing school year, would we need to make two motions? One for this school year and then one for the upcoming school year? Like, what would be the timing of that?
So we could probably do it for a 12-month period, right?
Right, you
And
can
that
just
would
starting
cov-
now.
That would
Yeah.
cover,
Okay.
that would cover next school year as well.
Okay.
Right, or get you to May.
Yeah.
And then we
Whatever
would,
the date is
and then
today,
it would just be like,
16th.
it would be something we would renew as a board?
Annual review, yep.
Okay, like put it on the board
Right.
calendar and we bring it up
Whatever
every...
month we feel comfortable, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so because it would be ideal that if we're going to do it, and this is what the board decides, then to have it be something that's just routine, maybe
Right.
to do that.
Yep. That's how I would envision it.
Okay.
I think this makes a great deal of sense. First of all, just the board appointment of a hearing officer to preside over any expulsion hearings that may be happening in our district for all the reasons that you mentioned. And I really am in favor of the idea for having it come up in front of the board on a yearly basis. I think that creates good continuity, and as the board positions change, it's an opportunity for new board members to understand what is going on, to ask questions and so forth. So as a matter of process and governance, I think that's a great way to look at it.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Dana,
You're
for coming
welcome.
tonight. Okay. Is there now then a motion to authorize the superintendent to appoint a licensed Illinois attorney to serve as a hearing officer in student disciplinary proceedings? The time period?
So moved.
For 1 year.
Second.
Marilyn, would you please call the roll?
Member Kelly?
Yes.
Member Thomas?
Yes.
Member Rivera?
Yes.
Member Daniel?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks again, Dana. Our next agenda item is the fiscal year '23 budget capital outlay expenditures. Mr. Brian Stachek.
Thank you, President Dillon. Wanted to kind of walk through, I think it's kind of important for everyone to understand the process of how, recommendations are made to the board for capital projects, or I'm sorry, capital purchases. When we start opening up the request period for, budget requests, and that could be any of the budget requests that we ask for, whether it's purchase services, supplies, or capital in this particular case. When we open up that capital outlay portal and we ask for those requests, that is always for next year's budget. The intent of that is not to take in this information at the end of March, beginning of April of this year, and then somehow that's purchased by the end of this year. The purpose is we're building next year's budget. And so that's why we do that. We get that information, and then we start bringing that information forward to the board. And so really what happens in that process is that, and again, as a reminder, our fiscal year starts July 1st. New fiscal year starts July 1st. So there would be no intent, again, to spend any of these dollars essentially before July 1st, okay? So that's part of the process of building next year's budget. Secondly, when we go through the process of having these requests submitted from the division chairs, associate principals, potentially supervisors, any of those types of things, they submit these requests, and they are, when you enter the capital outlay portal, you input this information. They are the individuals who determine what they believe the priority should be. okay? That is not something that we determine here at this particular level, at the administrative level, at the district level, but that's something that they put in, and they, recommend it based on, their point of view, I guess, if you will, as far as where they stand with a particular request. And so we take all of that data that we receive, and we start to look at it at an administrative level here at the district level. And simply because somebody puts in a request and they have labeled it as a priority 1, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's even going to make the list. There are multiple reasons that could happen, all right? First of all, one of the reasons is we look at, when we start building a budget for the next year, we start to look at how much we think we can actually put into a total for capital outlay. So, for example, if you said, well, we're going to spend $2 million, right, in capital outlay, equipment, for example, then what you would do is, okay, we're going to look at that dollar amount. If we had $2.5 million worth of priority 1s in that particular, in that list, we're going to have to kind of look at and say, okay, how do we now reprioritize even the priority 1s? Because the goal, of course, in the district has always been to provide a balanced budget. And so we have to look at those items. So we look at them from a budgetary perspective. Secondly, we also look at them from a curriculum perspective. Somebody may put in a request, again, a priority 1 to them, but as we review them, from an academic perspective, if it doesn't fit with the academic goals or missions of the district, we may say, no, we're not going to provide that because that's not the direction, as far as the curriculum in which the district is moving, okay? So there are certainly those reasons that we would look at those. Let's break down what we actually receive in capital requests. So first of all, we talk about capital equipment for the classrooms, all right, which is really essentially what we're looking at here on these requests today and back in April when we talked about the grant-funded requests, we talked about the furniture requests, and then now we're talking about other classroom items, classroom capital requests to be utilized in the district for next year. So you have that capital equipment. Then you have capital projects. And so when the individuals enter the portal and they submit their information, there is essentially sections divided out by their budget accounts that say, okay, here is where you would put this information, right? You would put it in because this is a division expense for a capital expense. And then there's a sort of a generic catch-all account, which is sort of this building modification renovation piece. So you would put, potential building modifications, submit those into that section as well. And so what ultimately ends up happening is I have provided here tonight the entire list of capital that you saw. That really, I have the April date on there, but it was really the end of last week in March when it was provided and when we closed that portal. So you end up with capital outlay requests that are equipment for the classrooms. You end up with capital requests for projects. And then we inevitably end up with items on the list that are not even capital requests. But they kind of made it into this catch-all, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. They would, we would look at those and see what we can do in terms of, would we move that to a supply budget? Would we move that to another location, but still be able to fulfill that request? And let me give you an example of, each one of those. And so one that falls into the category of not a capital request. There's a request on here for a replacement of a whiteboard in a classroom. All right, that's not capital outlay. That's just simply the replacement of a whiteboard. That's a regular maintenance piece, and so that one wouldn't even make our list here. It would ultimately fall to what we would look to do is either see if our B&G staff could replace that whiteboard. And if they couldn't do it, then what we would do is we would have a company come out and do it. It's going to be a minor cost, a minor repair essentially in the course of regular maintenance, okay? So that would be one item that we would look at. That's not even a capital request. It hit the list because it was submitted, and so we'll take a look at that and we'll see what we can do something about. When we take a look at, for example, capital equipment for a classroom. If you look on line 2 of, what page is that? Page 52, you'll see that there's a request for a new vision screener for driver ed, all right? So that is an example of an item that is capital outlay, and it is essentially for the classroom, okay? And so obviously many of those items on there, as you see, are for that purpose. Then, when we get to, obviously, you know, the extent of the technology pieces that we have on there, as we talked extensively about those last time. Then we get to, if you go down to essentially the original list, then we would look at something, let me pull up. We talk about, one of the requests on here is replacement of, at South Campus, field house lights and the pool lights. Okay, so both of those are listed as a number 1 priority, essentially, if you will. At this particular point, those would become capital projects for a summer. And so we would look at those, and I would add those to the list that we will begin talking about in June of capital projects for the summer of 2023. There's no way that we would be able to, at this point, once we receive this data, have a project like that completed in time for the 2022-2023 school year. So that essentially will become a project, if approved, for the following summer, the summer of 2023. And I can, we can kind of, talk through all of them, but that just kind of gives you a flavor of what ends up happening with this original list that we pull, we receive that input, and then we start to look at dividing those things out and figuring out where we're going to go with them. Are they going to fall to a B&G or maintenance kind of, issue? Is it going to be a capital project, or is it going to be, capital equipment? And so right now we're discussing essentially the majority of the capital equipment for the classrooms, as we've done in April and May. And so we would then bring back items that are going to require, changes to the facilities for June, and then in August we would kind of try to finalize those items moving forward, and go in that direction. I know that there was, some discussion about the pool scoreboard, which is a valid request and a good request. Again, the issue with that would be that we would, obviously the board would be presented with that, because that's going to require us to, when we replace that, to actually shut down a facility. The pool would have to be shut down for some time in order for us to replace that scoreboard. And so, again, that goes back to the timing of us receiving this information really in the first week in April, going through it, putting it forward. We really don't have that ability then to push that out and say, okay, we're going to get this done in time for the next school year. The timing doesn't really happen that way. And in fact, we're right now, unfortunately, we're seeing even longer delays than what we've had in the past with supply chain issues, labor issues, and so it's becoming, even more of an issue where ordering equipment, it may take us 6 months before we can even, order a scoreboard before we would have it in place. We're kind of facing that right now with the scoreboard at Bennett Field. And so it's a little more difficult even in these times. So with that, what I'd like to do is just take a pause there and see if anybody has any questions about the process and about how we arrive at these what's recommended. Because again, we will look at these administratively, and then we will make recommendations based upon really those budgetary factors, and then of course, do they fit the curriculum, the direction that the district wants to go as far as academics. So are there any questions on any of that?
Sorry, Allison. I was just going to ask that, so when you were saying earlier on in that portal process and someone designates a line item as a priority 1, if someone, then obviously your team looks at this and then vets that, it doesn't change the level of it being priority 1, right?
No, not at all.
It will always stay where that is at.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay,
the priority level, again, was input by the individual who submitted the request.
Sure.
So it doesn't then, we don't change the level, the priority level.
Okay.
We simply look at that and take it into consideration when making the determinations But again, each individual who submits, a request certainly has their own point of view on it, and we fully understand that. But, we still have to go through those and make sure that we are providing the correct information, provided with the correct information, and then providing the correct information to the board with our recommendations.
Great, thank you. Allison, did you have a question?
I did, yeah. So tell me, so you said they all go through a portal, and that's earlier in the year, did you say, or earlier in the fall?
No, they go through what happens is the portals typically opened up we open it up usually first, second week of February. So in this particular case, we opened that up in February of, I think it was it was around February 9th, I think, of 2022. And then we typically allow for about a 7-week period for the submissions, and we typically will close that portal the week usually of or the week before spring break. And so that's when all of that information is received. And then we will close that. We will pull the data on a spreadsheet, and that usually I start reviewing and looking at that potentially over the spring break, and maybe not, but it would certainly be that, around that first week in April, somewhere in that area.
Got it. So Brian, the question that came up, and it was in a couple of the comments, earlier in the meeting about the video scoreboard for the pool. How long have it sounds like that has been not usable or not working well for a while. Is this something new for us to be looking at? Has this been going on for a while, or has it been kind of in that priority status and not moving up, or why haven't we addressed this one as quickly as like the football scoreboard and such?
Well, I don't know how long it has been a problem. That would be probably better answered by athletics, but we have not seen a request in prior years that was a number one for the pool scoreboard. This is the first time that we've seen that as far as a priority one goes, and honestly, I don't think that it had even been on the list until this year. I'd have to go back and review that, but again, it's not been a priority one, and we've not moved that down at all. That, again, this is just coming to us essentially as that priority level this year. I don't know to what extent it's the pool scoreboard has been a problem, but that's certainly something we can find out and, understand why we can't repair it. That would be the first question, why we couldn't repair it so that it would be reliable, obviously, and kind of go from there. But that's the best I could answer as far as the history of what's going on there. Again, we probably have to speak with athletics, John Grunke, to find out how long it's been an issue.
We can dig into that, Allison, and get a lot more information.
Yeah.
Back to you.
I would love it, because I feel like that's something that is obviously a big problem for not only the one swimming team, but many of the different teams and water polo and everything. So
yeah, if you look at, just look at the age of scoreboards, right? We know the Bennett Field one was 20 years old. We know this one is 15 years old because it was put in when the pool was actually 17 years old now. Yeah. And so we know the North Campus Fieldhouse is probably just as old as that. We have scoreboard need. We know this. We have scoreboard needs in a lot of different areas. So, but we'll get those details and get back to you.
We really need to address it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Some kind.
Yep.
Yeah.
It has to be in working order for the sport activities.
Yeah, thank you. Let me move this over here, because thank you for the clarification of the different processes to bring forward capital requests for expenditures. So I was trying to follow you, and the terminology is similar, so I think that's part of the confusion a little bit. But there's basically 3 periods that I've kind of heard you describe that you bring forward. One is kind of starts in April or May, and that's when we start talking about projects for next summer. So probably in June, I'm assuming you're going to start bringing information forward to us.
That's right.
That will be talking about the summer of 24.
23.
23.
Summer of
right.
2023.
Right, next summer. Because this year, we did all that last year. So projects like these, like you said that the field house lights and the pool lights
Yeah.
are two projects that would require facilities to be shut down.
Yes.
So they really need to be planned for in the summer.
They do.
Could those have come forward? Is there some portal or something, like if these were new projects, that you would have gotten that input in time so that we could have talked about it for the summer? And not in the past, but I'm just talking about moving forward. Does this portal open up, or do the things move over?
Yeah, so to answer your question, that's essentially what we are doing, right? So we open up the capital request portal now for the following year.
Okay.
So these two items were not on a list
Weren't part of
from
it.
last year.
Okay.
Right. So ultimately, we are doing that, and then, we would bring these forward onto that list that the board will see in the coming months in June and then August. And so you would see those there. Obviously, we try to knock off as many of those as we can, and also keeping in mind the fact that the financial resources are not unlimited. And so, I think that's,
Yeah.
look, I'd love to be able to grant every request and say, hey, this is outstanding, look, we have plenty of money, we can do it. And I'm not saying that we're having financial difficulties at all, not by any stretch of the imagination, but we still have to be cognizant of what we're spending on and how much. And when you look at that extensive list of projects that we have, there are many millions of dollars, and quite honestly, in today's economy, I think we're probably going to have to reprice a lot of those projects and up them quite a bit, because I think we're, in just some more recent conversations with our architect, what was $1 million project a year ago might be $1.5 million or $2 million now because of cost. Again, those types of things. But that's kind of a different note to this. But yeah, so that's what we do. We bring those forward, and then we start to plan for those. Certainly, look, if there is an issue with a scoreboard, for example, that it's not repairable or no longer, functioning to that degree, the expectation isn't going to be that we're going to say, well, that's too bad. We just have to figure out a way around it. We're going to certainly do everything we can to make sure that we get that replaced or we get it up and running. That's certainly, we're going to address that.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially, like you said, how we would look at that and say, let's get something done here. Again, unfortunately, something like that still is not, it's not going to be quick in these times. It wouldn't be quick otherwise either.
Right. Well, and I do appreciate what you're saying is that we have to balance all of this with
Right.
when the facilities can be taken down
That's right.
in order to create the improvements. At the same time, Brian, your comment about some of the older, we have older facilities, so it's incumbent upon us and all of you, and then to bring to the board a plan that takes into consideration those older facilities, which you do all the time, and you do a fantastic job of it. But I hope we're also looking at kind of the expected lifespan of some of these things, that even if somebody didn't bring that forward, if it just came on the list this year, but we recognized previously, hey, that it's 20 years old, it's 25 years, we got to have it on here, and maybe not wait till it breaks to decide if it's something that we should try to tackle and replace. That's kind of like, that 5, that 7, that 10-year plan that we've talked about here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to your point, we're in that window right now where we're thinking of summer of '23. Like, if
Yeah.
you remember last summer, the board heard for the first time in June any major capital projects. In August, we asked the board to authorize bid specification preparation, and then September, so we're already in that window where we're thinking about, not for capital equipment, but for capital projects, we're thinking about summer of '23.
Right. The other thing is, do you keep anything that we didn't get to that came on and roll it over and keep the date that it was first submitted to see if it's, I can imagine that there could be things that are on here that we might not get to for a couple of cycles, but yet it would be good to know if it's been on there for 3 years or 2 years or.
Essentially, I have not done that with the capital equipment requests. We've done that with the capital project request. We would start, obviously, we would end up with a list that would be fairly long in terms of that. And so I've not brought those forward. Typically what's happened is they've, you know, if it is still a priority, they would re-request it the following year. And that's how we've done that.
But we can absolutely get some more information about this scoreboard.
Yeah.
And bring it back.
Yeah, we want to make sure that that's functioning and operable.
Right.
So we'll get that taken care of.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Brian, one other question about the security camera system upgrade. Can you talk a little bit? I know that's on the recommended list, and it's a pretty substantial amount. And it says over the next 3 to 5 years, we will be phasing out the current one. So this is, whatever this upgrade is, it's going to be going for the future, whatever we bring in. Is that it?
Yes, that's exactly correct. So there's really two parts to the security cameras, and one is sort of the head end of the system that controls the system, and then the second part are the individual cameras and their locations. And so we are at a point right now where this request essentially is to replace that head end of the system. Because it's an older system at this particular point, and again, this is, I think I mentioned last time, we're not putting VHS tapes in there to record this information. For those of you who remember VHS tapes, this is all electronic data at this point, and so what we're looking to do is the request on there is to replace that head end so that there's more storage. We're able to keep the video for longer, extended periods of time if it's needed. And then in the future years, so the existing cameras will work with the change out of that head end unit. However, over time, we would also be looking to then replace some of those cameras and probably add some additional cameras as well.
So this does not include the camera. Also, it's just the upgraded system.
Yes, that's correct.
Got it.
And I think we did talk a little bit about those cameras. They're like $2,000 or $3,000 each.
Yeah, they're fairly expensive. Again, that's not going to prevent us from getting some more of them in the future. But the need right now is to make sure that we have the system itself up and running, able to store the data for longer periods of time. I think what we've been talking, and Dr. Tyrell may know a little bit more, but I think we're able to store the data for, 5-6 days at this point, something like that.
A week at most, right?
Yeah, and so with a newer system, we'll be able to do that for extended periods of time. I think maybe even up to 30 days. So, and that's really what the direction we need to go at this point with this part of the system first, and then moving into some of the additional and newer cameras.
Great.
Just curious, would that be part of on our safety plan as well, or is it just going to be in the technology and?
Well, right now it's just on sort of this project list, the capital project list. We could certainly put it into a safety plan. I mean, there'd be no reason not to, but we want to obviously move on this, at this particular point.
I was talking about the existing life safety plan that we have.
No. It would not be in a life safety plan.
Yeah.
No.
And we did talk about this last week, that there is a pretty wide variety of different needs that kind of cover different areas of the school that touch on different divisions and departments, like the music and some special needs and some other areas too, in addition to athletics. So it's pretty varied.
Yeah, and as I said, it's open to all of those division chairs, the associate principals, the supervisors, that sort of thing. And so that's where these are generated from. These requests are generated from. So are there any additional questions on the process, how we get there, those types of things?
And I appreciate, though, going back to the process again.
Sure.
It's helpful.
Yeah. That being said, let me just quickly run through again what we have here today. So again, as we talked about, we had some initial request approvals in April. which were those grant-funded requests, and then also a lot of the furniture requests that we had for, purchases for the district for the start of the 22-23 school year. So now you have a list in front of you today that are the recommendations for, to be put also into the FY23 budget and moving forward. And so, again, as I talked about, this list is just a little over $1.7 million of requests, and we know that it is very technology heavy. And we anticipate, with the one-to-one program and upgrades in technology, as we kind of said last time, 5 years in technology is a long time, and so things move quickly as far as the upgrading of technology. And so we would probably anticipate, numbers like this moving forward in that technology realm. So, but again, so a little bit over $1.7 million of capital requests today. And then there was it was a little over $200,000 of requests in April. So we're $1,919,000 worth of capital requests to be placed in the FY23 budget, including the ones that were approved in April. And so with that being the case, as I kind of mentioned before, we're looking to sort of have this balancing act of here are the requests, here are the total dollars, and then here's what we think we can put into the FY23 budget. And if you recall, back in March, I had provided the board a copy of the 5-year financial forecast. And at that particular point, not including capital projects, but including the technology and other capital requests, I think it was about $1.6 million is what I had put into that forecast. We're a little higher than that at $1.9 million right now. And as I had mentioned during the committee of the whole meeting, we've also seen some, one particular source of revenue has jumped way up for us. And that's corporate personal property replacement taxes. I can't tell you that it's going to stay at this level moving forward. And just to kind of give you an idea, prior to the fiscal year 21, so not including last year, but all the way up through fiscal year 20, which was the 19-20 school year, district would average about $3.4 million in that revenue source. Last year, we took in $4.7 million, and this year, so far, it's $9.4 million. So there's myself, my colleagues, my other business managers, other school districts, we've been all asking questions and trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And we'll certainly, I don't think it's going to come down that quickly, so I think we'll have the funds to cover this moving forward. And then, of course, in your packet there, I did provide that sheet that essentially is that original document that I received. And so you may be asking, and hopefully I was clear on this, but you may be asking, what are the 1Ls and what are the 1Ws, or 2Ls and 2Ws? And so the 1 is still the priority, 2 is still the priority, but the L means that it's been approved, it has been approved and on my list, and the W means it is waiting for approval at tonight's meeting. And so then after that, I've sorted those by those priority codes and by whether they've been put on the list or while we're waiting for approval, and then everything after that are the items that we are going to move to other lists. We'll talk about with B&G. And then there's 2s and 3s on those items, on those lists as well. And then finally, on page, what page is it? Let me take a quick look here. Page 69, you'll see that I have a 5-year history of approved capital expenses, along with a 5-year average of what was approved for each or division or area. And then you would see in the far right-hand column, you would see for 22-23 those same numbers totaling out again by those individual items or divisions. And so you can see there again, when you look at those numbers, it's no surprise that technology is about 70% of those requests. And sort of historically there, you'll see, if you look back, the percent average of the 5 years is 73%. So we're pretty much right in that ballpark. And there's the total dollar amount, including all, again, the ones that were approved in April, of the $1.9 million. That being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of the items or any other questions you may have.
Anybody else?
Thank you for putting the historical chart in.
Sure.
That's helpful.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you then. Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 23 capital outlay expenditures as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Marilyn, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.
Our next agenda item is the 2022-23 amended school calendar. Scott Eggerding.
Thank you very much. We do have a couple of recommended changes to the calendar due to a number of factors. The first one, and we talked about this in the fall, was the insertion of an Election Day holiday. All schools must be closed on November 8th. We also have a teacher contract of 183 days. So we're looking to add an additional day for our certified staff on Wednesday, August 17th. That would preserve the contractual number without going beyond Memorial Day, just to for one day, or going into the weeks of winter break or spring break. As far as the late start schedule, we've been talking about our challenges with first student all year. When the school year first started, we were told that there were 6 buses that would never be here on time to start the day. So those students were being brought here at 7:30. They have figured out how to get 2 of those buses here earlier. But we still have had 4 bus routes that have the students have had no relief on early dismiss or on late start days, so they're still here at their regular time, even though school doesn't start till 8:45. When we look at the other buses, depending on weather and other factors, we've had as many as 20 of our 34 buses arrive after 8:45, which is the start of school. We have very consistent lateness, almost to the minute, from certain routes, with 5 to 6 of them coming not until 9 o'clock. So what that's meaning is, by the time students get off the bus, get to their lockers, and get to their classes, they're missing 20 minutes or more, depending on where their classes happen to be. We've talked to our bus company. We've tried all sorts of creative solutions. And honestly, the more we look at the distance that those buses that are late tend to come from, the more that we see this as a real concern about equity in students getting here, because often the students who are coming by those longer buses aren't able to walk to school or get local rides. So that's why we've made that recommendation to start late starts at 9:15 instead of 8:45. Certainly we can use that time in our teacher PLCs, and we can be, we certainly won't just be waiting an extra half hour for kids to show up. But that being said, we would then, our bus company assures us that everyone will be arriving in time from all routes for a 9:15 start. It's not our favorite solution, but as Brian has explained in previous meetings about the cost of purchasing our own buses, that's almost incomprehensible, and adds a whole new level of wrinkle. So we only have really that, unfortunately, that one option. One of the reasons why on those late start days, because our buses are shared with other routes, with the elementary schools and also with Argo Summit area and throughout the region, they're not able to get here any faster or make any shifts, and often they're hiring different drivers for those days. So often at the beginning of the year, in those late start days, the number of students are late is even greater until those drivers learn their routes, even though it's once a week that they're doing them. So that's the reason for that recommendation. As far as the reinstatement of early dismissal days, we began those in 2012, 2013, as an opportunity for divisions to meet. One of the challenges of a split campus is we don't often get teams together especially with teachers that commute. So having that early dismissal time for divisions was really advantageous. We used it all the way up until 2021-22. That was our hybrid year. We did not have that time built in, and we did not add it back into this year either, for a number of reasons, but essentially we felt we could build what we needed into Institute Days. That being said, we've had a number of initiatives, a number of requests, a one-to-one program, a lot of things that our teachers are asking for additional training on. And what we'll be able to do is, by bringing back those half-day school improvement days, is move those division meetings out of Institute Days and provide additional whole staff training on Institute Days. One of the ways that you're allowed to do a half-day school improvement day is by banking minutes. The way you bank minutes is if you have any school day that is longer than 300 minutes, those minutes can be built up until you've earned enough time to have an early dismissal. We bank a tremendous amount of minutes. We bank 68 minutes a day. So we have quite a bit of class meeting time, more than many schools in our area. That's 343 plus 25, 368 minutes each day, not counting lunch passing periods or what the state says is recess. We don't have recess, but so that's how we've used those days, and again, was something we would like to bring back. We've also looked a little bit at how testing has impacted our school day. We have, through the Illinois Science Assessment, the PSAT 9, PSAT 10, and SAT, all of which have taken quite a bit of time, but in addition to that, we've had a significant increase in extended time test takers, which requires quite a bit of staffing and facility usage, and we're finding that that's become a challenge to get everyone through those state-mandated tests, PSAT 9, 10, and SAT. So we're looking in April to have our regular day of testing where we test everyone on the same day, but that next day, April 13th, make that an asynchronous remote learning day so that everyone who is still testing for that extended time would have that time. What that
Scott,
shows...
I'm going to ask you to stop for just
sure.
1 second. In the back, if you have conversations, we're trying to listen here and it's a little distracting. So if you want to have a conversation, if you could just go outside and then come back in when you're done. Otherwise, if we can just keep it down to a minimum. Thank you.
The one other small bit, we are allowed to count parent-teacher conference days as a student attendance day. And that was our initial thought, in particular with the election day, since that's a one-time deal. But in looking at student instruction and the other things that we've just been talking about that have had to be adjusted, we wanted to add back a student instruction day by eliminating the March Institute Day. That's one that we have used as a flex Institute Day in prior years for inclement weather, snow days, that sort of thing. So we're taking that one out. That gives back a day of instruction for students. It doesn't change the teacher's calendar because they were going to be here anyway. So ultimately, a number of different little changes, but certainly worthy of the discussion and a formal recommendation tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just have one question to clarify. So when you're saying that we're banking minutes, we're banking, so that's more than the state requires us
Correct.
to have instructional minutes a day.
Correct.
So every day we have 68 extra minutes that we are not required to be in class.
I mean, technically, we could shut down the day 68 minutes earlier and be within the 300 daily minutes of minimum. That's just not something we've ever considered.
I'm not opposing that.
I know.
I'm trying to understand.
No, what schools
I mean,
have for budgetary purposes, so we have 7 courses for every student. There are schools that have gone down to 6 for budgetary reasons and not gone afoul of the minutes.
So that is above and beyond what some of the other
Correct.
schools are doing, is what I'm hearing you say.
Some, yeah.
Okay.
I understand the changes that you've made, why you've made them, the rationale behind. Next year, with respect to the new change in late start, I would just hope that we would get some information about how the extra time has positively impacted professional development, you know, what those PLCs were able to do, how it's impacted the, our professional learning schedule for institute days and so forth. And at the same time, you know, I guess I'm assuming that some of the constraints that the bus company has this year may be the same next year, but it would be good to understand if we're in the same position with them next year as we are this year.
Definitely.
And then Scott, remind me again, how long did we do early dismissal days? How many years was that in effect?
We started those in 2012, 2013, and then we just stopped them during the hybrid pandemic year and didn't add them back to this current year.
Okay. And what would have been some of the takeaways from when we used those early dismissal days? You said divisions were able to meet and really get
Right.
a lot more probably in sync.
Right, and that, again, that's been throughout, really, that was when we initiated PLCs, and we wanted time for divisions to meet together, but also time for those teams to meet on the late starts. And so it was those touch points that our chairs really valued because they weren't pulled in other directions like they might be on an institute day, and they were really able to focus on basically a quarterly meeting.
So it's really an opportunity for our divisions to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really helps support the teachers and the staff.
Right. And so, and our divisions are relatively large, and many of our teachers commute. So to get, you know, all 40, 50, 60 of one division together is actually really helpful.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Anybody else? Allison, anything?
No.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So then is there a motion to approve the 2022-23 amended school calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Marilyn, we call the roll, please.
Member Thomas?
Yes.
Member O'Bear?
Yes.
Member Daniels?
Yes.
Member Kelly?
Yes.
Member
Yes. Okay, our next agenda item then is the Illinois State Board of Education Exclusionary Discipline Report. Leslie Owens.
Thank you, President Dillon. I'm going to provide some additional information on the ISB Exclusionary Discipline Improvement Plan. This is on pages 75 through 81 in your board materials for tonight. What has been added, based on conversation last week, is a chart with the disaggregated exclusionary discipline data from the school year 2015-16 through 2020. And that has been broken down by the federal race designations of Hispanic, African American, White, Asian, American Indian, and 2 or more races. So that is included in that chart. Under the chart, you'll see the data described. The data that's presented in the chart is described, including the total number of incidences, as well as how many of those incidents are attributed to each group. Let me get down to that. So what you'll see is that the chart depicts again the top 3, sorry, I'm having trouble pulling the top 3 infractions resulting in exclusionary discipline over these past years. So those are all included, and the offenses of drug offense and physical confrontation have been included within those top 3 infractions, resulting in exclusionary discipline in all of the years on the chart. Gross insubordination was included in the top 3 twice, 2019 and 2020. Alcohol offense was included in the top 3 twice in 2016, 2017, and then arson was included in the top 3 infractions once in 2018. So occurrences of the drug offenses were lowest in 2016 with 29 and highest in 2019 with 78. White students represented the largest number of drug offenses in 4 of the 5 years listed. In all of those years, Hispanic students represented the next largest number of drug offenses. Hispanic students represented the largest number of drug offenses in 2018. White students represented the next largest number of drug offenses in that same year. Physical confrontation was lowest. Again, I'm just going over the top 2 that were present in all of those years. Physical confrontation was lowest in 2016 with 27 occurrences total and highest in 2017 with 40 total occurrences. Hispanic students represented the largest number of physical confrontations in 4 of the 5 years. White students represented the second largest number of physical confrontations in 2018 and 19. White and African American students represented the second largest number in 2020. White students represented the largest number of physical confrontations in 2017. Hispanic students represented the second largest number of physical confrontations in that same year. So the disaggregated data is now part of the data and analysis sections of the discipline improvement plan. So those are sections 1 and 2 of the 3-part plan. And they are directly tied to the action plan section, which is the 3rd section of the discipline improvement plan. One example of how that's tied together is that you just heard that drug offenses were one of the, had the highest rate of occurrence over the course of those years. And you'll note that we have tied in our district improvement plan prior to the plan, but at the end of last year, the recommendation of that partnership with Rosecrans to directly address those drug offense issues. So that's how the data kind of then meets or matches with the action plan steps that are indicated in section 3. So the recommendation is for the board to approve the discipline improvement plan for submission to the state, and certainly if there are any questions on the additional information, I'm happy to answer.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
If you don't mind. So I'm looking at, like, in the last 2 years, you have gross insubordination that has showed up. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because it seems to be there was 6 total students in 2019 to the school year 2019-20, and then 10 in 2018-19, and it had not appeared previously.
Leslie, I can jump in. So a couple of the biggest examples of things that fall under the gross insubordination category are when staff members repeatedly give students directions and students refuse to follow the directions, maybe compromising the safety of other students. Other situations could be, and happen to be, students leaving the building when being directed not to leave the building, presenting a safety concern as well. Those are just a couple of examples of what we would categorize as gross insubordination.
Thank you. I'm just saying that they're just appearing in the last 2 years.
They're appearing as one of the top 3 infractions resulting in exclusionary discipline. So that doesn't mean we didn't have instances or occurrences, but perhaps they didn't result in exclusionary discipline.
Okay. And I'm concerned about when we, like, there's one, limit, like class here, like, that might be identifiable to a student. Do we have to worry about that in disclosing this information? Because I know in different reports, like, you couldn't have for education if you had one student in this, like, do we have to be worried about any of the information here with one student? Like, I'm looking specifically at the American Indian for the drug offense in 2017 to 2018. Is there something where we have to be thoughtful about disclosing, when there's...
I think we're always concerned with protecting students' confidentiality, and certainly the information in terms of the federal race designations would only appear on certain student records that would not be provided
I just want
the
to make sure
name
that we're
attached
thoughtful
to.
about having it be
Absolutely.
identifiable.
I appreciate that, for sure.
And then the other question I have is when you're looking at drug versus alcohol, because alcohol I would think would be a drug when you're looking, so you break those both down. So if a student was intoxicated and under the influence with, drugs, they're not one infraction, a drug offense?
I think
separately?
I think it's as specific as it can possibly be. So if alcohol is the only substance that's included, then it would be coded as such. If there were additional substances included, it would be coded as a drug offense versus alcohol offense. I think it's, again, just trying
Alcohol
to
would be solely alcohol.
That would be my assumption, yes.
And if it was drug offense, then it could also encompass alcohol in it. It wouldn't be 2 infractions.
Yes, I don't think it would be 2 infractions. We can get clarification. That would be a question for our assistant principals on how they categorize.
One, especially when we're talking about Rosencrantz. The reason I ask that is Rosencrantz just for drugs, or does also, would you refer out a family for alcohol?
Sure, they work with all substance use and abuse, and so the specific nature of a student's substance use, they would obviously work with the family and the student to understand exactly what is being used, the frequency, and then their treatment would be specified to that.
So, okay, because that was where I just wanted to make sure that that also included any infractions for the alcohol.
Mhm.
Okay, for the referral.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay, I didn't know if that was why there was a separation. Between
Sorry, no.
Okay. Thank you for putting it together.
Of course. Any other questions?
Thanks, Leslie, for including the extra information that we talked about last time.
Of course.
I guess I do have like one more, I'm sorry, to ask one more question. So when we're looking at this, and this is where this is not my strong point with how to break it all down, but is there like a percentage? I mean, we have the percentage of the total suspensions of students of color, but maybe we need a percentage here with the percentage of, for the African-American students, for the Hispanic students. Like maybe, is there a way to further break it down with percentages?
For
Or
sure, we can do those calculations.
That might be helpful to say, like, you know, we have 30% of this, but only like 10% of this, because when we're looking at that.
Sure. Similar to what I did above, which was calculate, looking at the percentage, the disproportionality percentage, and comparing that to our percentage of students in the school, students of color. We can do the same here and just.
I think like maybe break it down one more layer with percentages might be helpful information to have.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I think we addressed this last week, but can you remind us one more time too, like the next steps once the submits, then how, what is the update and what's the expectation after this point? Because it's great that we've got a plan. Now we're going to start looking at this more closely, and we're going to take this data and we're going to make sure that we're following up and achieving the outcomes that we expect to get out of this. So what exactly, and Leslie, will be the
For sure.
next steps?
So that section 3 are the action steps. So that's really the roadmap for what we would be implementing next year, with the goal to decrease our disproportionality and to continue with having to not meet the metric of the exclusionary discipline. So again, reducing just exclusionary discipline in general. So the steps that are indicated or the plan that's indicated in Part 3 lays out those steps. So that's going to be a combined effort with many of the administrative teams in the district, our building teams, our assistant principals, our student support teams, our central office team, in conjunction with some of our community partners to make sure that we're providing that support and education for students and families and staff. And then the state will continue to report data. They started archiving the data and including that on their website, as Senate Bill 100 was put into place. And so they have state goals, and we are trying to support those state goals by meeting our local goals, and we'll continue to monitor that data, and then that data will be reported back to us. We know that we will continue to submit the plan for the next 3 years. We can't not submit a plan until we have 3 consecutive years of not having any, either being in the top 20% for the suspensions, the expulsions, or the disproportionality. So that's what we will be working toward.
Just a quick note on that too. So the data in this report is from the 2021 school year. So we will implement this plan during the 22-23 school year. And 1 year from now, we'll be required to submit a progress report to the State Board of Ed based upon the 21-22 data. So it's a year behind, essentially. But a year from now, we'll be required to submit a progress report to the State Board of Education.
And part of our goal of our plan is really to come up with those data metrics that we'll be able to report out to our staff and community on a quarterly, if not more frequent basis, just so that we're really keeping tabs on where we're at and not having to wait, for a full year to present all data, but to really have those benchmarks.
I just have one more question. Does the state provide any support or any guidance with regard to how these plans are created then?
They do. As far as the plan, they provide a bit of information in terms of what should be included in the sections, but they do provide a lot of resources in terms of what districts can do to work toward achieving the goals of not being within that top 20%. And those resources include some of the information we presented on last week with restorative practices and some of the discipline philosophies that schools can incorporate, as well as different plans and templates for schools to go through and to be able to look at the data, analyze the data, keep on top of all of that, and to include different stakeholders within your plan so that it has the likelihood of success. So they provide a lot of that within their website, just directly attached to the discipline improvement plan template.
Great. Thank you.
I do have one more question. I apologize in advance, but, okay, so just taking on what, the attorney had presented to us about going to hearings, is that something that often happens? Like with the suspensions? Like going to a hearing? I think if I wrote it down correctly, not the first hearing, but when they request a second hearing, then we would have like a hearing officer involved. Is that like commonplace? Or is that something that doesn't really
No,
happen?
it's pretty rare.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, very, very rare.
Okay. Great. I really don't have anything else. Thanks.
Thank you. Allison?
Yeah, Carrie, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear a little of that conversation. But I did want to just, I think there's been some confusion on this discipline plan circulating, and I wanted to just kind of make it crystal clear, and Jill wanted to kind of chime in on this, that we want to make sure that there are not two sets of rules here, that this is one set of rules.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I wanted to clarify that because I think there's been some confusion in the community.
I didn't hear the...
Yeah, I'm not sure what can you explain the confusion, Allison?
It was something that that Jill had mentioned, but it has been circulating on some social media and such, that there were two sets of rules for students, whether they were minorities or the white kids. So that has been, and I have seen it myself, but Jill wanted to clarify, and we just want to say it out loud, that there are not two sets of rules here.
No, we have one student handbook. We have one code of conduct. We're not talking about two different sets of rules here.
Yep, great.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Leslie, for all that work, too.
Welcome.
Is there a motion to approve the Illinois State Board of Education Discipline Improvement Plan as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Marilyn, will you call the roll, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. We've now reached the consent agenda. Can I have a motion then to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Hey, Carrie, real quick on that was I had just a quick question or a quick thought on the consent agenda, and I'm just going through it. There was talk, and I hope this is the appropriate time to mention it. There was talk last week about the Board of Education, the regular meeting dates, and approving those for next year. And there was talk about, did we like the structure of the committee of the whole and the regular meeting? And I know we can talk about this at the board, or I'm hoping we can talk about this at a board retreat. But I did want to just, I don't feel that this setup of the committee of the whole and the regular meeting is as conducive for discussion as I would like to see. So it's something that I didn't speak up last week because I didn't know we were discussing if we liked it or not. But I think those committee of the whole meetings, they have so much information packed into the meeting that I feel like it turns into more of just two board meetings back to back. And again, I know we can discuss this later, but that did come up last week, and I wanted to say it before we approved the consent agenda on that.
Yeah, so the board has two options here. The board can approve the consent agenda, including the recommended meetings for next year, and make an amendment after that, which we have done. We've had to make amendments before. Or the board can pull this item from the consent agenda and have further discussion at the June workshop and move forward that way. It's really up to the board what route to take.
I'm good keeping it in the consent agenda as long as we really commit to look at it and think if we want to. I mean, I'm okay going with this in the consent as long as we discuss it late at a different time where we could potentially add some meetings to it, or just so that they're not so long, and that's the best.
So just to clarify, it sounds like Allison's thought is to move forward with it on the consent agenda. We can talk about it at the June workshop.
Yeah. I think that sounds great, too. I am cognizant of what Marilyn said last time, that, you know, there's a lot that goes into the planning of these meeting dates, but I think that it's, I think we'll have some valuable discussions at our IASB facilitated board retreat, so that could result in changes.
I would agree with that.
Right.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to move forward then, Allison. So now, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Marilyn, would you call the roll, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you, everyone. We can now move on to the non-agenda related public comments. And I believe we do have some, so.
Yes.
There are 2 opportunities for audience members to address the Board of Ed. We appreciate your participation, but please understand we do not engage in dialogue. If there is a specific question or comment that requires follow-up, the appropriate administrator will respond at a later time. Individuals addressing the board are expected to conduct themselves with respect and civility pursuant to Board Policy 830. Individuals shall not use vulgar or obscene language or impede, delay, disrupt, or interfere with the board meeting. In the event this occurs, you will receive 1 warning regarding your conduct. If the behavior occurs again, you will be notified that you are in violation of trespassing and will be asked to leave our property. Failure to comply immediately and cooperatively with a directive will result in the involvement of law enforcement officials. Marilyn, can you please call our first speaker?
Maureen Werema.
Hello, my name is Maureen Werema, and I'm a resident of Western Springs. I recently came across comments on a story about the incident at LT's South Hallway that made statements about LT's recent focus on a strategic plan and DEI efforts being unhelpful, with excerpts like, quote, help all of the students, you're taking away resources from other issues, and focusing on social issues to the detriment of other issues, end quote. Statements like these remind me of the letter Dr. King received from 8 white moderate faith leaders that prompted him to write the letter from Birmingham jail. For those who are not familiar, these faith leaders called the movement in Birmingham unwise and untimely. As we've seen time and time again, there is never a time that is deemed the right time to deal with social justice and equity. And as we've also seen time and time again, there will always be public backlash when we do start to deal with these issues. Hearing stories from some minority alumni and students at LT ranges from frustrating to heartbreaking. LT's focus on their strategic plan and DEI efforts are vital to the health of the school and cannot be overlooked any longer. I and many other members of the community support LTHS and their commitment to the pursuit of creating an inclusive school culture that focuses on belonging, respect, equity, and empathy. Thank you.
Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Perchal, and I live in Indian Head Park. My question was just concerning the administrative position called the Director of Equity and Belonging. And I was wondering, just because I've heard of this happening in other school districts out of state, will the Director of Equity and Belonging position be used to force LTC staff, either now or sometime in the future, to refer to students by opposite gender or gender-neutral pronouns at student request without consent of it by parents or guardians? Thank you.
Molly McShane.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. On February 14th, 2022, Carrie Dillon denied my legal right to address the school board. Shortly thereafter, I filed a formal complaint with the Public Access Bureau. I am here tonight to provide an update to the board, parents, and the D204 taxpayers. My complaint is still being reviewed by Assistant Attorney General Benjamin Silver, who is with the Public Access Bureau. I reached out to Mr. Silver on May 6th for an update on the matter and was told that there is none because of quote-unquote moving parts. I spoke to Mr. Silver again on Friday, May 13th. I was told that my complaint is still in the process of being reviewed because of the complex subject matter and the large volume of public access cases currently being handled. It is my strong opinion that the board denied me my right under Illinois law to address the board. Ironically, the specific issue I was going to speak to was my First Amendment rights. No one should be denied their God-given right to exercise free speech. I will not allow the Lyons Township School Board to bully or censor me. I'm looking forward to a resolution to this matter, and one that is in my favor. Additionally, just today, the board requested subject matter in which I requested to speak to tonight. I don't know if this is consistent with Illinois law, but I'm working on finding that out now. Thank you.
Leslie Mendoza. Ms. Ziert.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Choi Ziert. I'm a resident of Western Springs since 2015. I have a current LT child who is a student at LT and a 2021 graduate. I grew up, I have memories of running around the playground at recess with peers yelling at me, saying ching chong, other kids coming up making slanted eyes, and quite horrifyingly, the chant, Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these. These words made me feel mortified, like an outsider who wasn't welcome or was somehow inferior. I didn't bring these incidents up with teachers or other adults at the time because the time that I grew up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me, was also an incredibly popular statement. But we also know that words, hateful words, can have a long-term impact on mental health. So fast forward to February of this year, when a student at LT was attacked with ugly, hateful insults simply for making a post celebrating Black History Month. I'd like to thank my daughter's U.S. history teacher, who during that time led discussions in her classroom about the incidents that were going on campus. One of the questions she asked the students was, have you ever experienced racism? I asked my daughter if she had ever experienced racism at LT and whether she shared any incidents with her classmates. She told me that there was one time when she was sitting in English class where some kids were walking outside down the hallway, and she heard one of the students say to the other student, it's not like we're in China, we're not going to eat dogs. And that might seem like a benign comment to most everyone else, but to her, being half Chinese, it really hit her in the gut. And this wasn't even a comment directed at her, but those comments stuck with her all day long, and she said, I realized that everybody else sitting in my English class, it probably did not even impact them. I asked her if she shared those comments with her US history class, and she said she did not. And we talked at length about why it's important to share when you are invited to share, how she could have helped educate her classmates on how hateful words can really stick with somebody. Sure. As the months have gone on, and I've heard about other incidents that have involved hateful language, I realized that as a community, we really need to speak out against hate in all forms, whether it's hate based on race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. And I'm asking our community to speak out against hate so that hate has no home is not just a slogan on a yard sign, but is a reality here at LT. Thank you.
Nancy Bramson.
Hi. My name is Nancy Bramson, and I'm here with Kathy Pearson and Rebecca Romano, and we are representing the Community Diversity Group of LaGrange. We have long supported educational equity and strongly support school districts in their efforts to eliminate all forms of hate and bias, to change the culture so that all students feel they belong, and to close the achievement gap and opportunity gaps for our students. In doing this work, educational standards are raised and the goal of academic success can be achieved for all students. As you may recall, 2 years ago, some LT students and alumni spoke at board meetings saying they experienced incidents that led them to not feeling fully valued at LTHS. We are grateful that the district deepened their belonging training, hired Dr. Rowe as an experienced steward for this work, and started the process of creating a strategic plan which we hope will build an equity lens into its decision-making and operations. We understand that this road is difficult. Change is not easy, and it's understandable that some people who don't feel impacted by inequities question the need for change. Please know that we appreciate that what the board, administrators, faculty, and students are doing to help all students feel like they belong at LT, such as making changes in the curriculum so that all students can see themselves and their stories reflected there, encouraging and supporting all students to have access to high-level coursework, and promoting a culture where all students feel valued and are able to thrive. With meaningful focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, all students will have an opportunity to understand their perspectives and experiences in addition to their own. We encourage District 204 to continue this important work that aligns with community values to prepare our young people to go out into the world with both an excellent academic education and the ability to engage people of all backgrounds with compassion, acceptance, and fairness. A win for us all. Thank you.
Susan Aherns.
Hello, and I'm here to speak on a positive note to all of you. My family has lived in LaGrange Park for 50 years. My 6 kids attended LT, and now 19 of my 20 grandkids are going through. 6 have graduated college with honors, 2 from Marquette. 1 is in law school, 1 is in graduate school for speech pathology. A St. Olaf grad with a music degree in the height of COVID, and right out of college was hired as choral director for a junior high and a high school with thanks to the awesome start of her music training at LT. This spring, 3 more graduated with honors from Ohio State, St. Louis University, and the University of Michigan. 2 are students at the University of Iowa, 1 at Michigan State, 1 at Grand Valley, 1 at Hope College, and next fall, 1 will go to COD, and 1 to the University of Illinois. They all left LT very prepared, and when I ask how their classes are going, over and over they say, not bad, I really was ready for this. So I just want to say thank you to their teachers, coaches, counselors, administrators, school board, for all the opportunities and choices that they had. I think well-rounded kids leave LT having had so many extracurricular opportunities. So this is a list of what my family dug their heels into beyond their education. The Best Buddies program, Lyons newspaper, LT radio station, recycling club, snowball, girls gymnastics, football, cheerleading, track and field, cross country, wrestling, girls and boys volleyball, girls and boys water polo, girls and boys soccer, madrigals, chorus, orchestra, sailing. Yes, there is a sailing club at LT, and strategic planning committee, equity and belonging, and National Honor Society. So kudos to LT, and I love my grandchildren. Thank you.
Janelle Town.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janelle Town. I'm a resident of Western Springs. I'm also the chapter chair of Awake Illinois, Western Springs. I'd like to first thank Dr. Waterman for meeting with Shannon Adcock and myself. Shannon, in case you don't know, is the founder of Awake Illinois. Last week we met, and we cannot tell you how much we appreciate what came out of that meeting, truly. We're grateful for a seat at the table and have hope for the future that things are going to improve. We discussed town hall style meetings, as this is not the correct format for parents, and you saw a lot of people leave. They don't want to sit through 2 or 3 hours of listening to policy and financials. So we discussed this, and your willingness to make that happen, Dr. Waterman, is appreciated. Parents and taxpayers need to feel as if they are being represented. Oh, David, please, don't put this in the paper. No, no, no. Board of Ed meetings are obviously not the time for parents to get into a dialogue with the leaders at LT. So we feel like this is a good start at creating a bridge between people that don't necessarily agree with everything that DEI stands for and want more information on it, because many of us think it is not an effective program. And despite the fact that you may think it is, there are a lot of us that don't. And we saw what happened in the viral video that went all over social media when that attack occurred in the school halls. I have a 7th grader, and we are considering sending her here. I had 2 older students that went here, and they had a wonderful experience, and they're doing very well in their 20s. And I never heard of anything like this ever occurring in your hallways when they were here. Everybody got along with everybody, and nobody talked about what color skin their friend had. It was just they were friends. Were they cool? Were they somebody you could relate to? Did they have the same morals or character issues that you did? That's who my kids hung out with. Now, maybe we're just different, but they didn't judge people by the color of their skin or whether or not they were Asian or whether or not they were Indian. I taught my children not to see that. I don't know about you guys, but I taught them not to look at someone's race and judge them by that. I taught them to get to know people. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care if you're a lesbian. I don't care if you're gay. None of that matters to me. Can I relate to you? Are we going to get along? Are you somebody that is a good person of moral character? The rest of it is irrelevant to me. And I know, a lot of you know what I do. I founded an organization that helps primarily African American and mostly disadvantaged people. I don't look at that, and I think that this is going in the wrong direction, and it's against everything that Martin Luther King wanted us to believe. Thank you.
Leslie Mendoza? Did Leslie come back?
Thank you. For those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Leslie Mendoza. I'm a senior here at Lyons Township, and I've been a student here for 4 years. And as a student that has grown up in this community, I really looked forward to coming to LT 4 years ago because it was one of the most highly respected schools. We had great academics. And unfortunately, that's changed in the 4 short years that I've been here. And I definitely think that some of the priorities that this administration has implemented has definitely played a big part of that. Like Mrs. Towns said, people used to get along in this community, right? There was no color that was implemented on students. There's no such thing as this equity and belonging thing. And I think in the 1 year that we saw and we hired a director of equity and belonging, we have seen absolutely nothing but more division and more hate that come to our students. And I think for someone who is being paid over $155,000 a year to do absolutely nothing is a little absurd. And we saw it in the viral video. We saw it in the viral video of a student that was attacked brutally because of the color of her skin. And for the administration to not condemn that immediately is disappointing. And I definitely will be even more disappointed if administrators don't come out and verbally denounce every bit of racism that has happened over the last couple of weeks and the amount of hate that you all preach to stand against. And if you were going to have a committee of equity and belonging means equity and belonging for all, and not just a certain group of students of color. It's all students. And I know you guys all know that I've been trying to implement a Turning Point USA chapter here for the last year. And due to false information, it's been denied 3 times now. And I think, expecting that we have a director of equity and belonging, students who are conservative should feel that sense of belonging because that's what our director of equity and belonging is here for. So I definitely think that LT has a lot of potential. It just takes leadership. And we haven't had an administrator that has shown leadership in the last 2 years. And I definitely think it's going to take some people to step up. And I want to be optimistic about it because LT used to be a school that people would really admire. And I hope that we can bring that back. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Oh. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can come up and speak again. Is this non? She was on the list. Then, yeah, come up and you can speak.
I don't like to call out like that, but I also followed the rules.
No, I apologize.
I'm Camille, speaking for the second time this evening. There's a lot to unpack following those two acts, however. Recognizing that these graduates in general, it's so important. It's awesome. It's awesome that these kids have worked and are graduating and about to start their life. But the fact that we are celebrating all these graduates brings me back to my opening comment about LT and its disproportionality in suspending and expelling minority students. How many students don't get to go and graduate because of LT's unfair disciplinary practices? Too many probably to admit. I know firsthand, I know students with zero behavior problems who barely got out of LT. So I can't imagine how many students were suspended or expelled and basically discouraged from continuing their career here unfairly. When people ask me about my town, where I live, where my kids go to school, I proudly say it's LaGrange. I love LaGrange. LaGrange, my family has been LaGrange for 5 generations. My grandmother went to LT, my father went to LT, I graduated from LT. I have 1 student already who has graduated from LT. And what I can say is that all of us have the same type of stories with racial issues within these walls. 4 generations. So for my community members to come up here and say, we don't see color, and that's gaslighting, you're lying. You see me standing here black. I see you all up there, and almost all of you are not. I see it, and you see it. And if you say you don't see it, then you are a large part of the problem, because we all see it. That is what makes us individuals and unique, because we are all different. And we are supposed to see and recognize those differences. But to say, I don't see color, you're lying. You do. We all do. That is a fact of life. When people ask me about LT, I have to tell them LT is a great school. You should move to LaGrange. We have a great downtown. It's awesome, right at the metro. I say that to anybody who asks. But if it's a black parent asking me that, there's a caveat. I have to give them a disclaimer. LT is a great school, but, it's a big but you're going to have to work every day and fight for your kids for the most mundane things. The things that I had to come to Brian Waterman for because we followed the rules, but my daughter was still met with a no, you can't do that, and I have to go above and over and beyond. I know that because I went to LT, because my father went to LT, because my grandmother went to LT. Someone moving into the district, however, they do not know that. They don't realize that if you don't fight LT or the school in general, that your kid just may get passed on by the wayside. They may get suspended, expelled unfairly. Parents are fighting too hard for their kids. That's all.
Thank you. At this time, the board will adjourn into closed session for the reasons listed on our agenda. The board will not be taking action following tonight's closed session portion. Can I have a motion to adjourn into closed session?
So moved.
Second? Or, sorry, a second.
Second.
Thank you. Marilyn, please call the roll.
Yes.
Oh, is Allison on still? We lost her.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.